No, I can't hear you, John.
John, you're still muted.
Can you all hear me?
I got you now.
Now we can.
Okay. Welcome to Behind the Fiends, everybody. It's your old friend here, John, joined by my fellow Pete from Hawaii, Mr. Tristan, Mr. Dave from Tennessee, and Mr. Jason Bradford from the fine state of Michigan. How you all doing tonight, or today, or whatever it is in the world?
Doing well.
Doing good.
Well, Tristan, I know you're doing good. I talk to you just about every other day at the comic book shop, so you don't count. I'm just kidding. So how's weather? I know, Dave, you said it was getting cold in Tennessee. How about you, Jason? How's it there where you're at?
Oh, it's cold here. It's in the teens. Cold as snow.
Good old Michigan.
Oh, gotta love it.
Yeah, well, y'all beat my Buckeyes 2 weeks ago, so good job. But we won't talk about that. That's kind of a hurt. But got us all on here today because we're going to talk about this list I found on ScreenRant.com, the top 10 horror movies of the 90s, and see if we agree with this list. But there was something that me and Tristan was looking at earlier, and I thought maybe I would see what you all feel about it, fellow horror nerds and those that work in the horror film industry. This Return of the Living Dead reboot that's supposed to come out in Christmas 2025. I've seen the teaser for it. Seems it's going to be very practical effect heavy. And a lot of the old heads that were in charge of the Return of the Living Dead from back in the 80s is going to be on board for this. But my question is, do you think it needs a reboot, or do they just, should have just added on to the story and went with something new?
I'd rather see him go with something new. Reboots sometimes just don't fly that well.
Yeah, they tend to. You tend to try to make it look shinier and new, and you end up losing something in the process.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Yeah, I like new ideas. I like to see original stuff. Reboots can be good, but there's so many new ideas out there that can be done.
I would just
go over
new ground.
Yeah.
So it says the iconic zombie franchise Return of the Living Dead is shambling back to theaters with a holiday twist as Living Dead Media, which is the John Russo's company, as far as I know, releases a first look footage of this Christmas themed sequel set for release in 2025. Watch the trailer in the space above. Teaser showcases the franchise signature Tarman zombie dragging a Christmas tree through a snow-covered cemetery during a blizzard.
Nice.
Director Steve Walsh from Muck and Kill Her Goats is going to be in the director's chair, and they are going to be using Tony Gardner from Zombieland, Hocus Pocus, and the Chucky franchise. And like me and Tristan was talking about before you all joined us and we went live, is this the Chucky from the 80s or in current, or is it the television show Chucky? It's not. We really didn't know. Did you ever get any confirmation on that, Tristan?
I was looking it up.
But he's going to be utilizing mainly the traditional practical effects over CGI, which I that's a plus for me. I mean, without seeing the movie yet, I will, get us a big check mark for me on that. Jason, Dave, how do you all feel about that?
I'm a little tired of movies that are all CGI and no acting, no story.
I'm definitely partial to practical myself.
Practical seems, for me, now I don't know how a lot of people feel, but a lot of us older folks that have grown up in the 80s with practical effects or 70s or whatever, it works better for horror because when you got an actor
Yeah.
that's talking to a green tennis ball, it's hard to emote what you're trying to emote on the screen. Where if you've got the monster standing in front of you, like It, they had Bill Skarsgård in the makeup, but you could tell there was a lot of CGI used in that as well. And to me, that took me out of the film.
Yes. And blood never looks good when it's CGI.
No,
I'd
it's
rather
too
have a
shiny.
bad practical splatter than a decent CGI splatter.
Well, I mean, to be truthfully honest, blood splatters. I mean, that's how it should be. It should just go wherever it goes. It shouldn't be
Exactly.
a pattern.
Exactly.
So how about you, Tristan? Being you're the young head here, how do you feel?
I always believe you should always do more practical. One of the things I look at is the Thing prequel from I think it was 2011. Just looking
Yep.
at it, I'd rather have it be more practical effects. The prequel just looked way too cheap compared to the original. I know
Well,
that's weird, but
there's always that waxy look to any CGI character. Just
Yeah.
especially in the 90s and early 2000s. Like I was watching Van Helsing last night with Hugh Jackman, and that movie did not age well at all in terms of the effects for the amount of money that was put into it by Universal. And the Wolfman effects, the vampire bride, it just looked very cheap. Where if you'd have done, like say, a Stan Winston or a Rob Bottin or anybody like that, it would have aged well. Like The Thing today, you were saying The Thing prequel. You go back to 1982 Thing, and that still to this day blows anything that you can do on a computer out of the water.
Yes. Yeah, the thing
But
aged beautifully too. You watch it now, and it's still way ahead of its time.
I'm still
And the
trying to
sound,
figure out the ending to that film all these years later. But
everybody still is. Like numerous debates on that still.
yeah, I don't know. I know a lot of people are excited about this flick, but I'm like Dave and Jason and even you, Tristan. I mean, I would rather them create a new story and go with that. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. I mean, I don't know. You've already told that story 40 years ago in 1985. Why should you have to go back and retell it? I
right.
mean, that to me almost shows that there's no creativity, there's no imagination there, and you're just using something that existed already and you're putting it into a different time frame. Yeah, you're putting it into Christmas, but whatever.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is they want to target a new generation, but like my daughter can sit down and watch. I'll use Return of the Living Dead for an example. I would much rather her watch the original with Linnea Quigley because she's one of my favorite 80s scream queens. First time I saw her was in Silent Night, Deadly Night, but I'd rather have her watch the original than a remake. I feel like the remakes lose the cheese that we love. And along with the practical too. The CGI, no cheese, it just doesn't cut it. They try to make it sleek and streamlined and modern and hip, and I think it loses a lot of its 80s and 90s horror integrity in that process.
Very true. I mean, it's like take Terrifier, the Terrifier movies. Not necessarily my cup of tea, but that's like one of Tristan's favorites. I hear him talk about it all the time. But that whole movie's practical, and look how good all of the gore and everything looks in it.
That
And
shower
this is
scene with Mia and her boyfriend was was really good. That was really good. I watched that. I watched that over and over again. My mom was in the room. I'm like, hey, mom, watch it. She goes, what the fuck's wrong with you? This is fantastic. Look at this chainsaw being used the way it's being used. That was great.
Yeah, my mom was the same way. She was the reason why I got into horror movies because she used to think it was funny to take her little boy and scare the shit out of him as a child by showing me Salem's Lot from back in the day. I watched that series now, and I'm like, man, I can't believe how bad this scared me as a child.
Exactly.
Mr. Barlow and Mr. Stryker, and how I was terrified of it. And then I watch it today. Now, I will say the little kid knocking on the window with his little fingernails, nah, son.
That's iconic. Yeah. Yeah.
We're much more impressionable, though, when we're really, really young.
True.
I mean, I got you guys by a few years. I mean, I can remember watching the old Frankenstein movies and with Boris Karloff and stuff like that. It scared the hell out of me when I was like 9, 10 years old. I watch them. I look at that old stuff today, and I actually have to laugh a little bit. But you'll
find this maybe funny, Dave. I don't know if you will or not, but I set my son down, my youngest, Gavin, and if he's watching, hi, Gavin. But I set him down one night. I said, we're going to sit here. We're going to watch some Hammer. We're going to watch some Universal Horror. And I put Dracula on. And we were sitting there and he was watching it and he was trying to be into it. And we got to the end and he looks over at me and he goes, where's the climax? Where's the final battle between Van Helsing and Dracula? It just ended with him staking him through the heart. There was nothing there. So I had to go on this whole diatribe of explaining to him that those movies back then were basically filmed stage plays, which is essentially all it was. It was a stage play that they put on film. And he just could not get that. He goes, well, that kind of sucks. They just leave you hanging like that. I'm like, well, I can see that old school horror movies just aren't your bag, man. I know not to show you those anymore. And then I showed him Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it got to Sally at the dinner table, and he looks over at me and he's like, "Oh, that screaming is so annoying. Her screaming is so annoying." I said, "Dude, she's in a house full of cannibals, and they're eating humans in front of her. What is she supposed to do?" He thinks too logical. He's like Spock when it comes to horror movies. Everything's got to have a meaning, rhyme, or reason.
Plus, you got to think the situation filming that everyone was tired and working their ass off and filming around the clock, and it was hot, and all the props were real, and they smelled bad, and Gunner smelled bad, and we're wearing that costume for days and days in that heat. Those screams were probably based more on real life experience than acting.
I know the reshoot when they did the whole truck escape when she got in the back of the pickup. That was all that, the way she was screaming and laughing. According to Toby Hooper, that was authentic because she basically was about to lose her mind. Because of just the conditions. I believe it. Basically torture. For however many weeks they were out there. That, and then all of them smoking weed all the time, because I read Gunnar Hansen's book and he said that there was a weed farm back of that house back then. I was like, well, maybe that helped. Maybe it didn't. Let's see. What? Getting my other screen up here. Share screen. So this is what I was looking at the other day, and I thought this would be interesting to discuss, which is the 10 best horror movies from the 1990s, and see if we actually agree on this list or we disagree with this list. So first up on this list is they had I Know What You Did Last Summer, which was written by the same writer that wrote Scream back in '96, Mr. Williamson. And it starred Freddie Prinze Jr., Sarah Michelle Gellar, what's her name?
Jennifer Love Hewitt.
Ryan Felipe, Bridget Wilson, and it was loosely based on the 1973 novel I Know What You Did Last Summer. Oh, Jennifer Love Hewitt. That's who I was trying to think. I was trying to read that writing on this little screen, and I was like, oh, I got the page pulled up right behind me, you dummy. I don't know. It wasn't high up on my list of the films that came out in the 90s as something that's influential, that kind of changed the game. I felt like in 96 with Scream, it already had been there and done that. Though The Killer was different. The Killer was basically, spoilers, a dude that they accidentally ran over, thought they had killed, and then he shows back up with a hook hand, and like I refer to him as, it's the Morton's fisherman, as a killer. You know, he's got a hook hand instead of fish sticks, that kind of thing. But it just felt like it had already been done, and you were kind of rehashing what had already been done. How do you all feel about that one?
Well, I can see how it might have been like how Friday the 13th ripped off Halloween. This is that version of ripping off Scream. I can totally see that. I did like the atmosphere of I Know What You Did Last Summer. It had some great moments, and the twist at the end was really good. The sequel was decent. The third one was not worth watching completely even once. And now with the I'll Always Know What You Did That Summer coming out, I'm interested in see what they do with the story. I know they're bringing back characters that have no business being alive, so that's kind of red flaggy to me. But we'll see.
Not
How
a
about
movie
you,
that
Dave?
I was overly thrilled with, to be honest.
It to me was kind of like what's his name, Williamson, the one that wrote Scream. I can't think of his first name.
Evan.
I have to apologize, but it seemed like he was like, okay, this thing's a hit, so I'm just going to keep riding this until the wheels fall off of having these teen stars, these teen heartthrobs or teen crushes, and put them in this precarious position of being stalked by a killer. Because yeah, Scream though, to me, was almost like it was making fun of. It was taking the slasher genre serious, but also in kind of a tongue-in-cheek way, making fun of it to an extent, and kind of putting it into the frame of, what if you're a horror movie nerd and you go way too far with your fandom, which leads you to being a mass murderer?
Mm-hmm.
And I Know What You Did Last Summer didn't go that route. But if it had came out, I don't know, if it had came out, let's say 2002, I think I could have taken it a little bit more serious as an original idea. But it coming out like they're Screaming 96, and then I Know What You Did Last Summer, it seemed like it was kind of too close together, and it was kind of the same thing to me.
To me, it was
Tristan,
always
you're the young guy.
Slasher movie. It was just always more of a forgettable slasher movie. It just never really hit me as much as Friday the 13th or even Scream. Scream, and it just completely killed it. In terms of me, I just think Scream's a better movie.
Yep. No, your opinion matters, man. I mean, I like having your opinion because you're the young one here out of all of us. You're 22. You're young shit. But but you obviously wasn't alive at that point in time when this film come out. I was in college still. But yeah, but I also grew up in the 80s, which, Dave and I'm sure Jason as well, where it was like everything was made into a slasher movie. Everything.
Yes.
It just became such an oversaturated genre that it burned its own self out. And the 90s come along, and there seemed to be like a horror fatigue. And maybe that's why I don't have I Know What You Did Last Summer as high up on my list of. I can't put it in my top 10 of those favorite movies. I mean, for me, if I had my choice in 10th, I would have The Last Broadcast. And the last broadcast is kind of a found footage horror film that predated the Blair Witch Project by about 5 years. It came out in 94. It never had a theatrical run. It was kind of a direct-to-video movie, but it was so well done. Now, the camera was crap. The sound was crap. It was an indie movie. You didn't have Indiegogo back then or crowdfunding. So you went with whatever credit cards you had in your pocket and whatever money you could scrounge up. But I'm not going to ruin it for anybody, but it was such a great movie because it revolves around the urban legend of the Jersey Devil, and supposedly this news crew has went missing, and all they have is footage of them dying, and they think that the Jersey Devil is responsible for it. But, and that's all I'm going to say, you can watch it for free on YouTube. I have found it. I don't know if Jason or Dave, if you've all ever seen that movie at all, but if you haven't, I mean, it's not anything that's going to win an Academy Award or anything like that, but for a found footage film, it was done right. And I know Tristan's probably never seen it, but then again, probably has.
No, I haven't.
He's seen as much. Yep, it's a great.
No, I haven't. I'll add that one to my list.
So, if you all had your number 10, what would you put at number 10?
I'm not as verse on the 90s horror as I am the 80s. I did look over this list when you sent it to me, John, and I do agree with a lot of these movies on here. A couple I haven't seen, but I don't know. To what I think should be number 10. I'm sure there's a lot better movies. I know what you did last summer from the 90s. I can't really think of any now, but I mean, I don't know. I can think of some that could be on this list besides this one.
I could say Scream 2, because I thought the sequel was done fantastically, which it's normally hit or miss with a horror sequel, but I thought it built on the story from the original flick. And to me, I think that's where the franchise should have ended. Yeah. But of course, it's making money, so you're going to keep riding the horse. I get it. I totally get it.
Part 3 was more like dragged behind the horse.
Yeah.
But, hey, it was still attached somewhere.
Yeah, it was kind of like the Michael Myers and Laurie Strode dynamic of, you got this half brother out there and he's the one that's killing everybody.
Right.
Or getting everybody to kill everybody. How about you, Tristan? What would you put number 10 for a 90s?
Actually, I talked with Luke about this when we were going to do this earlier this week, but I was going to say, if you've heard of it, Virus. I like my creature features. That's such an underrated horror movie.
What was it called?
Virus. Sci-fi horror.
Virus.
I love sci-fi
Curtis,
horror
correct?
and body horror. Yep.
Jamie Lee Curtis? Okay.
Yep.
Oh, you pulling from deep down in the basket there.
I didn't know it was that deep down. I've always loved that movie.
Yeah, but it's not one that everybody typically thinks of, Did we lose Dave? I think we might have lost Dave. I was going to ask Dave, but Dave's gone. Come back, Dave.
He'll be back. He'll be back.
Okay, so their number 9 on here is the Blair Witch Project, and I totally disagree with this being number 9. And the reason I disagree with this being number 9 is because out of all the movies of the 1990s, nobody, as bad as this movie might be to some, and believe me, I've heard both sides of it, that it's a great film. Steve Merlo, friend of mine, I'm pretty sure Jason probably knows him, and Dave.
Yeah, I've had him on my podcast too. He's a great guy.
Yep. Done like the Sawyer Massacre, and he's working on a movie now called Unseen.
Mm-hmm.
He agreed with me that this is probably the number 1 film to come out of the 90s in terms of a horror film. And I think we got Dave back, so let me see if I can grab him. There he is.
Yeah, I'm back.
So, okay. So we've got number 9 as the Blair Witch Project. And like me and Steve Merlo, we both said that this was clearly number one, not from the fact that it's the greatest movie ever, but the marketing for this film was so good. It literally had people believing that these three kids went into the woods in the Black Hills of Burkittsville, Maryland, and got whisked away to Narnia by some witch that was haunting these woods. And this was still in the infancy of the internet. They had a website for it, and they literally had missing posters for these people. They had books explaining the lore of Rustin Parr and this guy that was killing kids out in this house in the middle of the woods. And maybe I'm just a naive person, but I actually believed that this was found footage that had been found, and they were putting it out in the theaters, not realizing that you would never put murder footage out in the theater. But like I said, it was at that time where we were still in the infancy of the internet, and you could kind of still, in a sense, pull the wool over people's eyes. And mind you, I hadn't dug deep into found footage because I hadn't seen the last broadcast yet, movie I referenced earlier. But for me, this is clearly my number one in terms of the way that they marketed it, advertised it, and the money that it brought in I think the budget was 25 grand.
If it was that much.
I want to say so. And look, the three actors that played in this movie, they've been getting gypped for 25 years. They haven't seen the first royalty anything from this film. And it's sad because this movie still makes bank. Hell, they just released a video game not even 5 years ago based on it.
Yeah.
How do you all feel?
I liked it because it was, I mean, yeah, it had the marketing, it had all that, but it was just a unique way of putting out a movie where, you know, somebody's wandering around with a handheld camera. And, you know, I liked the fact that it was just a different way of doing a movie compared to virtually everything else that had been out there at the time. Of course, now there's, I don't know how many movies are out there where they got the same, you know, handheld camera type stuff and making it look like it's more of a documentary. But no, I would agree with you. I certainly would rank this higher than 9th. No question.
How about you, Jason?
I was fortunate enough to see this in the theater when it opened, and I remember it was very chilling. It definitely got into my bones. I walked out of there feeling very uneasy. It was very effective, very well done. Nobody judged me for this, but I hate found footage movies. I hate the shakiness of it. I hate the way it looks. I hate the cut. I did think it was very unsettling and very well done. It was a genius movie.
How about you, Tristan?
I would probably rate it higher than 9th, but for me, I wasn't around for the marketing or any of that, so it's kind of hard to go back and look at all the marketing, just because nowadays it's hard to look back.
Everybody's got a peek behind the curtain with it now, 25 years later. But at that time, like I said, I mean, and even the script, there was no script. They all had index cards, and each index card had, okay, this is the scene. And we just want you to naturally act out the scene. And that's how I come to find out the other day, that's how they shoot Trailer Park Boys. Because if you give somebody the scene, I guess it's like, okay, no script, we don't have to memorize it, but you're going to get our natural reaction. It can feel more authentic, I guess, unless somebody's trying to overact the scene. So there's a pro and con to that, but they did a fantastic job of making it seem believable because you really didn't think any of these people were actors. And at the time, they really weren't. They were college kids that just volunteered for it.
Their performances were spot on. And I think especially Heather did an amazing job. I mean, you really, really felt terrified and worried about her and what was going to happen to her. I mean, all of the kids, of course, but I think it was definitely Heather that kind of grabbed the attention and got the worry.
Well, they went crazy in the chat. Sorry, I missed all your chats. I got too caught up in talking. He says back in the night, he says he has it on VHS tape. I used to. God only knows what landfill that's probably in now, and I wish I still had it. I got it on Blu-ray.
This movie
On
probably
the
looks best on
anniversary.
VHS.
Yeah. And I agree with you, Jason. I hate the shakiness of a lot of these found footage movies. Because even if you're a documentary filmmaker, you still have a steady cam.
Right, exactly.
And that's
exactly.
what and they were still a documentary for a college, so why couldn't they have had a steady cam?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You know, that wasn't new technology for the 1990s.
Yes.
I mean, hell, that wasn't even technology for the 80s. I think Steadicam came in right before Evil Dead, maybe. So there's that one. So I say number one. Tristan, you say you wouldn't put it at number one. Dave
Higher
said
than
you
9, but
would.
not.
Yeah.
Definitely higher than 9.
Yeah, I agree. Higher than 9.
I just look at it for what it did culturally, pop culture, marketing. 25 grand and made, Jesus God, I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars. Lionsgate, of course, owns it now. And hey, start paying these actors that made this movie, because they ain't seen a bit of residuals in 25 years, and half of them or all three of them are they're struggling, and they kind of got left out in the cold, and it's kind of crap, because without them you wouldn't have had this film. Okay, me and Tristan were talking about this one earlier, and I love this movie, Event Horizon. Tristan brought something up to me earlier I didn't know, and that this movie was heavily inspired by the Warhammer series, which Tristan plays a lot of at Luke's shop. Give Luke a plug, Dragon's Lair Comics here in Hawaii. And it's all built around faster than light travel, where they try to open up a wormhole to travel from one end of the galaxy or universe to the other. And somehow they have opened up a wormhole into hell, and the crew on the ship is now missing, and something now lives within the ship, and the ship has become kind of like self-aware, and it feeds off of people's fears and their nightmares and stuff. I mean, I love the film. It was really disturbing. There was a body horror aspect to it. It dwelled heavily, or it was inspired heavily from the Doom video games. Went on to inspire the Dead Space video games and countless other sci-fi horror movies. Though I would have probably put it in the top 5. I don't know. I mean, okay, number 8. I get it. It didn't do all that fantastic at the box office. But once it hit the video rental stores, I know, kids, that's kind of like prehistoric. I'm talking like cave drawings, right? But once it hit video stores, it took off. And I can see Screen Rant has definitely agreed. 8 out of 10 users have rated it 9.5 out of 10. It's a movie I hope never gets a remake, because they will completely lose it'll lose its spirit. I feel like it won't be the same the second if you try to remake this movie. How about you all?
No, this isn't a movie that should be redone. This was. I thought I enjoyed this movie a lot. Probably one of the better sci-fi type horror ones from the 90s. And probably I don't know if I go top 5, but definitely in the top 10.
That's you, Jason.
I knew that was coming. I hate to say I've not watched this movie.
Okay, so
I did watch a trailer for it.
I know Tristan.
When I saw it on the list, I watched it. It looked very interesting, though.
I call it
my top 5.
Yeah, I call it the 90s kids aliens. it's basically our Alien or Aliens movie for
Okay.
us 90s kids. What's his name? Sam Neill. He played in this. He did such an amazing job of going from this protagonist to an antagonist. You slowly watch him de-evolve from somebody that you have sympathy for, and as the movie goes along, and he gets more and more dragged into this psychosis of whatever this ship is doing to him, and he just gives himself to it. And at the end, I mean, he's got like these, I don't know what kind of writing it is, but it's like carved into his skin. It's like this demonic type writing. He's pulled his own eyes out so he can't see the visions anymore. And then at the end of the movie, there's this whole big fight between him and Lawrence Fishburne, and then roll credits. But it's definitely one of the standouts of the 90s for me. It's definitely worth for watch, Jason, if you want to watch it. Wouldn't let kids watch it. It's definitely a little too much for kids, but
I do love the cast.
It doesn't let up. It does not let up. It's just balls to the wall, body horror, I mean, you're just waiting for something around every corner. And then the sci-fi gothic interior of the ship also was really memorable for me. I got to watch it not in theaters, but from the video store back in the day. I would say I agree that this is number 8. You know, I would say they got it right there. How about you? Or you all, I should say.
I think it's a fair rating. In the top 10, yeah, somewhere around 8, 7, 8, something like that is fair.
Matt,
guys, I apologize.
Hey,
I'm going to have to bail out.
Okay.
John, thank you. Cool. Tristan, nice meeting you. Jason, good seeing you.
Good seeing you.
And I will hopefully see you guys again.
I'll have to have you on again sometime, Dave. We'll talk about Universal horror movies maybe or something.
Thank you. Good night now.
Thank you.
Good night,
Y'all have a good one.
Later.
How about you, Tristan? I'm pretty sure this is going to be high on your list.
Top 5. I love sci-fi horror. That is like my true genre of horror. I love sci-fi. So, yeah, probably top 5.
And we can't ask Jason because he's not seen it, but hopefully you'll watch it.
I don't know why I get just the thought of how you described it. I get like Hellraiser vibes. Like, could you put Pinhead on there and have him be a source of the
That's a good reference. I didn't think to ever put it in that category, but you're right. There's definitely a bit of a Hellraiser vibe to it. Very much so. Never did come to that conclusion, and now I have. Thanks, Jason.
Like if Pinhead had showed up at the end of the film, would it fit? That's just the vibe that from the description.
Probably.
I mean, Sam Neill at the end kind of looked like a Cenobite at the end of the movie. I mean, to be truthfully honest.
But I will check it out.
It's a great film. It's very disturbing to an extent, kind of like Hellraiser. But it just doesn't let up. It once it gets going,
that's what
it just keeps going.
Yeah.
So number 7, Screen Rant has put Candyman from 1992, based off of a Clive Barker novel, and was directed by Bernard Rose. I don't really have much insight on this one because I haven't seen it in a long time. Now, it starred the late Tony Todd, who we just lost recently. I want to say back in early November, we lost Mr. Todd. And it also had Virginia Madsen in this film. Best I can recall about this film, it was based off a short story by Clive Barker, but it was also based on this character who was back during the 1800s when people of color exactly weren't getting treated that well, and there was a interracial relationship between Tony Todd's character and Virginia Madsen's character at that particular time frame, and they pretty much they murdered him in a very horrible fashion. And now he's came back as this kind of like urban legend, where if you say the name Candyman 3 times, he's going to come through the mirror and gank you, and you get the rest. And then there's a lot of bees, which I think Tony Todd was getting paid an extra $1,000 for every time he got stung while on set, something to that effect. Me personally, I would have to say that, yeah, it's fair to keep it at 7, but that's because I'm going off of the fact I haven't seen it in many years, so I really can't rate it any higher. What say you?
I really like this movie. I used to love it when I was younger. Then I went years without watching it, and parts of it aged pretty well, and parts of it just didn't. But it still had that effective creep factor to it. It was good to see Tony Todd kind of do his little cameo in the new. I wouldn't call it a remake. It was a continuation of this story, but it was nice to see him kind of reappear again at the end of that.
Yeah, I think Jordan Peele did a good job of kind of being faithful to an extent to the source material, and not just completely bastardizing it just for the sake of doing it. Like, you could tell that he truly cared about it. Was it better than the original or part 2? No, but I still think he did a damn good job of honoring it.
Yeah.
About you, Tristan?
I actually really like this movie. I love Tony Todd in basically everything he does normally, though, so I'm a little bit biased, but I've really loved Candyman. I also really like the fact that they use the practical bee effects. Like, even the bees coming out of the mouth were all practical.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah, I think that's where he got the extra $1,000 for every time he got stung.
Not a place I'd want to be
bees
stung.
in the mouth.
Yeah.
Hey, that's dedication to your craft, is all I can say. To let them put a crap load of bees in your mouth. I'm sorry, you ain't doing that to me. I'm not that dedicated. Like I said, I can only keep it at number 7, and that's no disrespect to Mr. Todd. It's just I haven't seen this movie in many years, and I really can't bump it up and I definitely wouldn't bump it back. I really couldn't bump it any lower than where it's at. But I also love Clive Barker, so as in terms of a writer.
Yeah, I actually like Nightbreed a lot too. I think Nightbreed was a lot more inventive and imaginative. And it's a little bit more of an underrated gem of his. Not as many people are aware of Nightbreed. I highly recommend that. I do like Candyman, but I do think Nightbreed is a little bit more deserving to be on this list, honestly.
Yeah. From what I've seen of this list, and best I can remember, last time I looked at it was a few days ago, and the reason I haven't looked at it anymore since then is because I wanted to look at it fresh again as we were going through it. So they didn't even put Nightbreed on here, and that was a travesty in my opinion. It's basically X-Men with monsters.
Yes.
Come on, if you're a nerd, you gotta love that. X-Men with monsters.
It's a slasher film too. It's everything.
Yeah.
And the slasher is creepy as hell.
Yeah, and he's like the normal one, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry about the language. I don't know if.
No, go ahead. I don't care. Okay. We're all grown.
But Clive Barker created a hell of a character with that doctor in Nightbreed with his mask, and yeah, that's nightmare material.
Yeah, it wasn't his mask. It was best. It was like a sack head, almost like a scarecrow with little buttons for eyes,
yeah,
right?
it almost looked like burlap. Yeah,
I think when they had the Dark Knight movie or Batman Begins, I think that's where they got the idea for the Joker's mask, or not Joker, but Scarecrow's mask
yeah,
was from that, because I saw so much of a resemblance between that one from Nightbreed and the Scarecrow from that movie.
yeah.
But like I said, I love Clive Barker. One of my favorite books ever is The Hellbound Heart, which, if you've ever seen Hellraiser, if you really want to get into what Hellraiser is about, go read the book, The Hellbound Heart, because a lot of what's you're seeing on the screen, which, don't get me wrong, Doug Bradley kills it. That movie is awesome. I mean, you cannot hate on it. But there was a lot in that book that really was left off the screen.
Mm.
And it kind of dwells more into what the Cenobites are.
Mm.
And they're a lot more feminine than what Doug Bradley plays Pinhead. Pinhead's more of a androgynous, very feminine features, and talks very feminine.
Yeah, I heard that, and I heard that's the new Hellraiser that came out a couple of years ago. That was a woman who played Pinhead, and I hear for that reason.
Well, she's a transgender actress, and Jamie Tristan, you got Google pulled up. What was her name? Could you look that for me? Jamie
I got that.
something, I think. She did a fantastic job of playing Pinhead.
Yeah, she did.
And I like the look.
Jamie Clayton.
The look. Yep, Jamie Clayton. And the look of Pinhead looked awesome.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like in that leather daddy outfit. It was, her body was more exposed.
Mm-hmm.
So you could see more of the mutilation that happened.
I feel like even the Cenobites in that one were a little more visually appealing, maybe even sexually appealing as well.
Well, that's kind of the whole thing when you read that book, The Hellbound Heart. There's an allure to them, though they look very
Terrifying.
disturbing.
Right.
There's kind of a sexuality allure to them.
Yeah, well, they captured
and that's
it.
why I say there's so much lost from that book that did not translate to the screen. And that Hellraiser that they did for Hulu, it really didn't get the love it deserved. It really didn't. And I think that has to do with the fact it was on Hulu instead of going to the theaters first.
Yeah.
But, and I can't remember if Doug Bradley had a cameo in that. I don't think so, but
I don't remember seeing him in that either.
But back to Candyman, like I said, I can't move it out of 7, but I am definitely not going to move it any lower. I'll have to go back and rewatch it. If I rewatch it, I'm sure I'll move it higher, which I can almost guarantee, because Tony Todd is such a force in himself.
Mm-hmm.
With the gravitas of his voice. I mean, he commands your attention when he's on screen.
He does.
He's like James Earl Jones. When he speaks, you cannot help but not give him your full attention. So did a great job of playing, and you feel sorry for the character. I mean, you want to hate him because he's killing people, but at the same time, you're like,
right. His story is so tragic. It's almost like he's justified in his actions.
And all he's doing is searching for his love, and he wants to, and the only way to truly have her back is for her to give up her own life to be with him. It kind of it leans a lot on 1932, The Mummy from Universal, where he finds his love again, but she's been reincarnated into another body, and he wants her to be back with him. Or no, he wants to put her essence back into the body of the princess that died. So, that whole reincarnation type deal. He has to kill the reincarnated one to have back the one that he had.
Right.
Okay, why did I go back for? There we go. My mouse is very there's the whole bees in the mouth. I'm sorry. There is no way
No,
that you were putting that many
it's-
bees in my mouth. And I
it's
love
awesome,
bees,
though, that you
but
did
not
it.
like that. Now, this movie is called Ringu by Hideo Nakata. It's a Japanese horror novel by Koji Suzuki. Ringu is a supernatural horror film directed by Hideo Nakata and was released in 1998. Reporter Riko Asakawa is prompted to investigate a strange videotape that supposedly led to the death of her niece and her friends. I guess this is The Ring before The Ring.
Yes.
So Tristan, I'm pretty sure you've probably seen this. So you take the
No, I
floor on
haven't.
this one because
No, I haven't.
I have not. I haven't seen this. But supposedly this tape curses people, and they must solve the case behind the tape within a week before meeting their fates or her fate. I want to watch it. Because I love Japanese horror. Japanese horror kicks ass, and people that Japanese and Korean horror, they've been killing it, especially what I've seen on Netflix lately. And plus, they really don't put any kind of restrictions on the filmmakers in terms of you can't do this because this is too graphic for people and different things like that. Where like with a lot of the animes, when we get them in the United States, we tend to bastardize them because we don't think that American viewers can handle what the Japanese viewers can handle, I guess. But
Say that with Terrifier 3.
yeah, but this movie came in at number 6. I haven't seen it, so I do apologize for the viewers that are watching our live stream right now. I really don't know where to rank this one. It sounds like The Ring, and for The Ring, yeah, I would put The Ring in top 5, but this is clearly something similar to, but not quite. So if anybody's even in the chat, and let's see, Hellraiser in space. Well, I guess nobody has come on the chat yet and said anything about it, so maybe they haven't seen it either. But I guess we'll move along then to something that we have seen. So Ringu, we'll keep you at number 6. Until I watch you, then I'll have an actual verdict. But it seemed to have scored real high. Now, this one I have seen. And this one I can say
Beautiful movie.
is in my top 5.
I think this is an eye candy movie.
Yeah, it's very gothic and very sexualized. There's a lot of
No disrespect to the Keanu Reeves. I like Keanu Reeves as an actor and as a human, but I think I get lost in this movie every time he's on here. He's so bad in this movie, and like I said, I love him as a person and an actor, but this is that one movie I can't get past his scenes without thinking, why?
This was not his strongest acting performance
It really
by
was
far.
not.
I think, and nothing against him, like you, he's one of my favorite actors ever.
I love him. Yeah, he's great.
Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
One of my favorite movies of all time is Point Break with him and Patrick Swayze, and him and Patrick Swayze played such a great duo and a protagonist and antagonist, how that movie went from them being buddies to being enemies at the end. Such a great movie to me. But I think he was cast for the sex appeal more than the fact that he was cast for, was he right for the role?
Yeah, I agree with that.
And for Francis Ford Coppola, who never seems to do that, I don't think that was, to me, knowing what I know about Francis Ford Coppola, I think this was a studio pick and not his. Because when you watch Keanu, he does such a bad British accent. Such a bad British accent. And he overacts the part so badly in certain spots. But you look past it because Gary Oldman, oh
Oh.
my God.
Genius. Fantastic.
If Bela Lugosi was still around today, I think he would have shed a tear watching Gary Oldman play that part.
Yeah. And hats off also
Because
to Winona Ryder. I think she was at the top of her game in this movie. Her performance was also spot on. Amazing.
and Anthony Hopkins as Dr.
Yeah, they
Van
all.
Helsing, and there's another one that a lot of people have forgotten, but Carrie Elwes. Carrie Elwes did a fantastic job in this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, is it the most accurate film to the novel? Yes and no. But you can say that about a lot of the Dracula movies. They take from the novel and then
Mhm.
they kind of stray away from it. I know there's been a debate for many years about this movie and other Dracula movies for that matter being um true to the novel, to Bram Stoker's original novel. And to me, this one, and I would have to say, I want to say Horror of Dracula from Hammer. But this one, way more than Horror of Dracula. This one leans way more towards Bram Stoker's original vision.
Mhm.
I would even go back as far as the 20s with the silent film Nosferatu, which has now got a new movie that's about to come out. But that silent film was the biggest reason it was called Nosferatu and the Count was not Dracula but Warlock was because Bram Stoker's widow threatened to sue the studio and the filmmakers over that because it was so close to what her late husband at the time had envisioned.
Wow.
About you, Tristan, you watched this one?
Not for a long time. It has been a long time since I watched it, so probably not best to say anything on this one. From what I remember, I love Winona Ryder in it. So
At its core, this is a love story. At its core. But it's a love story set into a horror universe. But it's very much first and foremost a horror or not a love story.
Yeah.
And I can't. I mean, for me, if I had to move it up, I would probably move it into the top 3. I think 5, little low for me. Because to me, it was one of the standout. It was one of the biggest hit horror films of the 90s. I mean, I remember it was everywhere. Everybody was talking about it. It was, I mean, you had video games and merchandise for it and this, that, and the other. It was heavily marketed. And that's why I would have to put it in my top 3. And it was so well made. I mean, Francis Ford Coppola doesn't usually make a turd. I mean, when you really think about it, he kind of his quality control is normally pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But Gary Oldman, yeah, he kills it. Winona Ryder, but the only downside, and I hate to say it, Keanu he was that square peg trying to fit into a round hole on this one. How about you, Jason? How do you feel?
I like I said, this was a fantastic movie. It was very well made, visually striking, practical. It predates CG. But I would actually remove this from the list altogether and replace it with another 90s vampire gothic tragedies. Interview with the Vampire is one of my all-time favorite movies ever. I would put that on this list in place of this one. And I would probably place it up closer to one of the first top 3. Interview with the Vampire is perfect in every aspect for me.
I totally forgot that, so I'm going to go back. Let's rewind. Rewind. I'll keep Dracula in 5. I totally agree with Jason. Top 3. I totally forgot about Interview with the Vampire. My bad. Yes, that movie compared to this one, there's no comparison. The Interview with the Vampire, Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise are clearly at the heights of their powers in that film. Christian Slater does a fantastic job playing the reporter in that
And
film.
Kirsten Dunst was brilliant.
Yeah,
That's Claudia.
to be such a young actress at the time, she stole the movie.
did.
Antonio Banderas did such a fantastic job. I mean,
Yeah.
there was really no bad acting in the film. I mean, to be truthfully honest,
And that
there
was
was no bad act.
that was, from my understanding, one of the first movies to actually use CGI in such a broad scope. But they kept it so subtle you didn't realize you were seeing it. Like the ships in the bay in the beginning, they look like you're really looking at them, but those were actually CGI. And obviously when the statue in the cemetery kind of opens her eyes and looks over, it's just all very subtle, very simple nods with CGI. It's not overdone. So they use that technique. That's the one movie I say is an exception to me hating CGI, because they didn't overdo it and they used it very nicely in that.
To me, there was almost a subtle sadness to it more than anything, because when you
very
really
tragic.
go, all Lestat wanted was a family. That was it.
Yeah, he just didn't know how about going
All
to get
he
it, so
wanted.
he kind of, he did what he felt he had to do.
And you felt for him. I mean, did he go about it in a pretty crap way? Yeah, he did.
He did.
But you
Yes,
got to
he did.
understand, he was a vampire. Vampires don't typically have, I don't know, they normally don't feel the typical emotions that we would feel.
Yeah.
He saw what he wanted. He knew he couldn't keep them as humans, so he had to make them vampires.
Exactly.
You know? So,
Yep.
And Brad Pitt, that was one of his better acting performances. I think that movie and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood are his two strongest acting performances for me.
Yeah, he was fantastic in it for sure.
So I changed my rating. I'll keep Bram Stoker where it's at. Yeah, Interview with a Vampire. Thank you for correcting
forgot about
me.
another.
Let's just get rid of Ringo and we'll
forgot
add
about
Interview with a
another
Vampire to the
movie.
list.
We forgot about another
Now you
vampire
got
movie in the 90s.
which one?
Luke said it in the comments. Dusk Till Dawn.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Tarantino and Richard Rodriguez, or Robert Rodriguez. I mean, yeah, the strip club full of vampires.
Yeah. That was
Luke, you should.
Yeah.
Luke should be on here with us. Keep meaning he's normally my co-pilot on these things, and he's not on here with us today. But yeah, Luke, definitely a good one. Dusk Till Dawn was better than Dracula. Yeah,
I think we could
guess
probably
if you like.
we could probably dominate half of this list with vampire movies from the 90s.
Yeah, because
Or a lot of
that
good
was a genre that was kind of oversaturated there for a minute after Dracula.
Yeah.
Next, we got Jacob's Ladder with Tim Robbins, Danny Aiello, Elizabeth Pierre, Matt Craven, Perot Taylor Vince, Jason Alexander from Seinfeld, Patricia Kellenberg, and Eric Lissell. I thought Jacob's Ladder was a Stephen King movie. I guess it's not. I always thought it was. Trying to remember it. So it's a psychological emotions affects war, showing Jacob. His past continues to haunt him. So it's basically like PTSD. I have not seen Jacob's Ladder, sadly. So I cannot faithfully rate this one. If anybody in the chat has seen it, and if you agree that it's number 4, should be higher, feel free to say so in the chat. These two fine gentlemen here with me, if either one of you have seen it.
I did see it once. I was not interested in it. Psychological horror to me is my least subgenre in horror films. It takes a lot for me to get involved with the psychological. It has to be really sharp and easy to understand and follow for me. It wasn't. I saw it once when it came out, and that was it. I just don't care to revisit. I don't think it should be on this list at all, honestly.
Well, there you go.
I've never seen it either, and not big into psychological horror either.
So could we say that we'll move this one completely off the list and we'll put Interview with the Vampire at number 4?
Totally could do that, yes. Maybe
Oh, yeah.
even move. Well, let's see what the other 3 are, but yeah, I'm open for that right now for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as of right now, we'll say Jacob's Ladder kick rocks, and we'll leave that open until we see what the last 3 are. Let's see, did anybody say? Nope, nobody said anything. Okay, so we're moving on from Jacob's Ladder. 9, of course, we've got the movie that kind of dominated the decade, Scream. Directed by
It still
Wes Craven.
dominates today.
Yep. Had a budget of $14 million, which today with a big studio film, $14 million ain't even going to cover your effects. So, yeah, that was a lot of money for back in 1996. Had Kevin Patrick, Walls, David Booth, Carla Hartley, Nev Campbell, Drew Barrymore, the rest of them. One of the friends of the channel, one of my dearest, closest friends, Nancy Ann Ritter, she played in this movie as one of the bathroom girls, her and Lenora Scalfado. I probably messed her last name up. It's Italian. I do apologize. But they played as the 2 preppy girls in the bathroom that were talking crap about Nev Campbell's character. Nancy's really awesome. Cusses like a sailor. I love her for it. She's been on the channel once or twice. But yeah, I mean, for number 3, yeah, I would say Scream for me is number 3. It definitely put a spark back into the slasher genre, which was pretty much DOA once the 90s rolled around. And that was partly because, as we said earlier in the stream, the 80s was just so oversaturated with it. You could not go down a video store aisle for horror, and I guarantee you, and Jason would probably agree, 85% of those films were slasher films.
Mm-hmm.
And it was everything from Slumber Party Massacre, highly underrated. I still love Slumber Party Massacre, but you had like Slumber Party Massacre. You had, oh God, what was another cheesy one? Trick or Treat, not the one with Sam, but the original one that was based around heavy metal rock stars and stuff.
They had Skippy from Family Ties was in that one.
Yeah,
Mark something. I can't remember his last name.
I can't either.
Yeah,
but you get my drift. They were bad. Most of them were bad slasher films.
The Mutilator was one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, Chopping Mall.
Oh, fun movie.
Ooh, I love that one.
Oh God.
Reanimator? No, that's not really a slasher.
No, Reanimator. Well, I mean no, yes and no, Tristan. He killed the one doctor and brought him back to life.
The
rest of the people died because the zombies killed them. But so yeah, I mean, a hybrid slasher, let's say. So yeah, you're kind of on the right path. What was another bad one? The Burning. I love The Burning, but was it great? Not really. Sleepaway Camp. I love Sleepaway Camp.
My Bloody Valentine and Prom Night are probably at the top of my list.
Jamie Lee Curtis, Prom Night. Didn't she? She played the antagonist in that one, if I remember.
Yeah, she did.
She went from being the scream queen to the one making the people scream, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
But talking about Scream 96, top 5, 3, I would say yes, from the fact that it kind of put a spark back into the slasher genre. but did it do much of anything? I mean, culturally, yes. I mean, God knows you see Ghostface everywhere. From T-shirts to props. I mean, hell, I've got my Fender Telecaster over there on the headstock. I have a Ghostface mask covering the headstock. Yeah, I mean, it was pop culture. It's withstood the test of time. Now, almost 3 decades later, it's still talked about in circles today. Hell, there's still movies coming out about it. There was a MTV television series based on it, which was loosely
That's pretty good.
based. Yeah, the ghost face in that to me didn't look good. It looked pretty bad, but it was still Scream.
It's still Scream.
It put Matthew Lillard on the map and made him a horror icon. Yeah, I mean, what can you say? It kicked ass. It made
And it,
Nev Campbell a badass in terms of the horror genre when you got like a Sarah Connor with Linda Hamilton and Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis. You could put Nev Campbell in that group of the badass Scream Queen.
I would like to also point out Drew Barrymore.
Yeah.
This is I am a yeah. I was convinced for the longest time, not super realistically, obviously, but I would go around telling everybody Drew Barrymore would be my second wife. Obviously, it never happened, but I have always had a thing for Drew Barrymore, and her in this opening scene. It was, I mean, it clenched you right away. It held you through the entire runtime, but to see her, obviously, spoiler alert, how many years later, but to see her off so soon and that violently, I think that's one of the reasons alone why I would definitely keep this on this list.
I will say this about that. And Wes Craven was a freaking genius for doing it. He put her as top billing because in the 90s, she was one of the biggest actresses in Hollywood. Now, initially, Wes Craven was done with horror. He didn't want to do any more horror. He was kind of burned out on it. But because he found out that she was going to be in the movie, that's why he signed on to do it. But he put her as top billing. What's that?
Yep. I heard Drew Barrymore tell a story, and I'm going by memory here. I'm pretty certain this is what I heard her say, that she was originally wanted to play Sydney.
Yep.
And that she was originally going to sign on for the lead role, but she was the one who wanted to kind of trick the audience, and she went to us and said, "Hey, let me be the Marion Crane from Psycho of Scream. They won't see it coming. Kill me off in the opening scene, and you'll have them." And she was right. Let's
a lot of people.
Let's trick them all. Kind of. It was all her idea, and obviously it was up to Wes to say yeah or no because it's his film. But
and a lot of people from video stores to from the theater to the video store could not believe that anybody had the balls to kill off your top billed actress outside of Alfred Hitchcock and Psycho. Of course, you know, Marion Crane, Jamie Lee Curtis's mom,
right?
Janet Leigh. But they did it. Hell, even me, I was like, and I've seen Psycho 100 times. And I'm like, did they just kill off Drew Barrymore not even 15 minutes into this movie?
Yeah.
And not just killed her off, but like hung her from a tree and disemboweled her.
My ass was thinking, oh, she's still got to be alive. She's going to be a hospital scene somewhere. There's going to be a Halloween 2 sequence in here where Ghostface is chasing her through the corridors and in the elevator into the basement, but it never happened. I wanted that to happen because I wanted her parts to be a little bit bigger of a role in Scream. I was kind of disappointed that she got killed off so early, but like I said, it was definitely a very intense opening that I've not seen before or since.
I've got to give her a quick shout out for let Tristan talk on this, but her in Batman Forever is one of Two-Face's girls. Oh my Lord.
Salt, I believe was her character's name in that.
No, she was a hottie.
Mm-hmm.
So Tristan, how do you feel about Scream?
I feel like it does deserve to be number 3. Completely revitalized, as you guys said, completely revitalized the slasher genre. We even kind of a little bit satirical with some of the tropes and stuff. It was making fun of the own tropes from the genre, kind of doing its own thing.
Yeah, and it kept it scary too at the same time.
Yeah, it didn't take the comedic route with it. It tried to still keep it serious.
Yeah.
I like the whole clumsy killer type of thing because every slasher movie back in the day always had the clumsy killer that would get hit in the face with a door or trip over air and fall down type of deal. So I kind of like that between Billy and Stu, kind of never just being klutzes.
Oh, and Billy's reveal that he was actually the killer and not a victim. I remember that was also a jaw drop moment. That was not expected at all. So that was another so the ending was just as brilliant as the beginning, and it never let up in between.
Yeah, because I never saw Skeet coming. I kind of had my when I originally watched it, I kind of felt Skeet was off, but I also kind of knew what his backstory was. Kid didn't really have it that great. Broken family, all that kind of stuff. But when you saw him getting arrested and all this other stuff and all that, I was like, is he just getting blamed, prematurely in this or just getting falsely accused? But the whole time I'm thinking Stu, because Stu just gave me this typical psycho kind of, there was everything was funny to him, from talking about murder and different things like that, typical psychotic kind of behavior. But I didn't see Skeet coming as Billy until the end, and I was like, oh shit. Okay, you got me there.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know there'll be somebody somewhere that'll comment on this or even in the chat be like, oh, John, you were fooled. I knew it was Billy the whole time. I'm telling you, I wasn't the only one. A lot of us. I didn't get to see it in theaters. I watched it on VHS, and we all sat around and we said the same thing. We couldn't believe that it was Billy.
Right.
That was the actual mastermind, and Stu was the lackey.
Well, you saw him killed on screen by Ghostface.
Yeah.
There was blood. There was the knife. So why wouldn't we think he was the victim until the big reveal where he's still hanging on to life and helping Sidney during his last breaths, only to say, gotcha. So that was...
What made me think that it was Stu was especially at Stu's party when he disappeared and killed Rose McGowan's character.
Yeah.
That's when I was like, that's Stu. Stu did that.
I hated that scene too because I loved Tatum. So, when she went up in the garage door, I was like, it was a great scene. It was a very inventive kill. But I like the characters. I think that's also what sets Scream apart. You like the characters. There's no one that pulls you as somebody who shouldn't be there, who didn't fit or that wasn't likable. So that made it all the more intense, I think, because everyone was likable.
But number 3, do you think it's number 3?
I can see it high at the top 5 of the list for sure.
If I could go back and we go back to Jacob's Ladder, I would kick Jacob's Ladder completely off the list, move this into 4, or was it 5? It was either 4 or 5 at Jacob's. I think Jacob's Ladder. Let's go back and look. Jacob's Ladder was 4. I would move Scream into 4 and put Interview with the Vampire at 3.
Yeah, I would put Interview with the Vampire in the top
personally.
3. So far, Interview with the Vampire, I don't know what number 2 and 1 is, but Interview with the Vampire on my personal list is always going to be toward the top. I have 3 all-time favorite movies from 3 different, two of them are from the 80s, and then there's the Interview with the Vampire. But for the 90s, that would be at the top of the list. I have to see what the top 2 are on this list, but I don't think I'm going to change my mind on that it would be number 1 for me.
Most people wouldn't agree with what I love. My all-time favorite. Well, my all-time favorite horror movies are my top 3 are 1941's Wolfman with Lon Chaney Jr., The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari from 1921, and number 3 is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So, but I love silent film. There's something about German expressionist film. I love it. I would love to see. I think you could make silent films work today. given the right story, right filmmakers, I think it would be awesome. But would people actually sit in the theater and watch it? Probably not.
Well, there was a
I mean, I
movie
get it.
about 10, 15 years ago, that movie called The Artist that came out. It was a silent
Yeah.
film, and it got a lot of attention.
I think as an actor, you have to be way on your game to pull off a silent film. You know, so, but, you know, I loved Conrad Veidt, you know, The Man Who Laughs, Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, so on and so forth. But that's just me. So we're getting to number 2. And what is number 2? Oh, The Sixth Sense. Haley Joel Osment and Bruce Willis. Number 2, that's kind of a hard, that's kind of a stretch for me. I would almost move. I'm gonna wait till we get through the list, but top 2, I don't know.
Yeah,
Don't know.
I would move it up. Great movie, great acting, chilling, all that good stuff. I would move it down.
Maybe not.
Not down to 1, but down to, like, you know, the higher numbers. 10, 9, 8, somewhere up there, if at all. I liked it, but it's not one that I would.
It was definitely the movie that put M. Night Shyamalan on the map.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
Clearly.
I think if there's a top 20, this would definitely be on that list for sure.
It's heavily referenced to death. I mean, you can't bump into a person that hasn't never said or heard the line, "I see dead people." I mean,
right.
It's referenced in movies and just in pop culture in general. If you haven't seen the film, you've been under a rock.
Yeah.
But top 2, it's hard for me to say because of was its impact really worthy of being in the top 2? I don't think so.
What year was M. Night's movie Lady in the Water? Do you remember? Was that in the 90s or was that the early 2000s? I'd always say that on this list. Even though it was more of a fairy tale, it had some dark, scary undertones.
Lady in the Water.
We may have just missed the 90s on that one.
2006.
Lady in. Okay.
Was it 2006?
2006.
Okay. Never mind.
I'm gonna start calling Tristan Jamie from Rogan's podcast.
I just have a tab open. I've got the article on another tab. I got the article open in a tab.
I mean, the acting was great in this film. There was nobody that didn't belong in it. I mean, they all played their parts fantastic. Haley Joel Osment, he just stole your heart. I mean, you felt for the kid. I mean, he's a medium, and all these dead people were trying to come to him.
Right.
And
who knew until years later that was Donnie Wahlberg at the beginning? You watch it now, and it still doesn't look like him.
There's a thing out there, and if y'all don't want to hear it, then mute me. But spoiler, Bruce Willis's character's dead in this too. That's what I've heard, and from what I remember.
So when he says he sees dead people, that's definitely a breadcrumb to what's going on.
Yep. And, you know, you got Bruce Willis, who's a doctor, child psychologist, blah, blah, blah. But he's also got his demons in his life and all that. Now, they don't specifically say that in this film. I've heard it's kind of like a fan theory, or maybe it's actually legitimate. Like, I've not seen this movie since it came out in theater, so I may be wrong. But there is a fan theory that Bruce Willis's character is indeed dead in this too. Which would make it cool. That would be a cool concept, that he's trying to help this kid, but he's dead too, you know? So it's like,
so you said the theory is that
spin on it.
You said the theory is that Bruce Willis's character is dead, or that the kid?
Yeah, that's what I always heard in the fan theory.
Yeah. He was killed. Again, spoiler alerts. If you haven't watched it, pause it here, go watch it, and come back. But he was shot in the beginning, but you're made to think he survived the ordeal. but he didn't. So he befriends Haley Joel Osment's character, who does see dead people, and that's pretty much the premise of the entire movie. Is Bruce Willis not knowing he didn't survive, and he thinks he's still alive.
Okay, so I wasn't completely stupid.
No, not at all.
So,
The twist at the end
like I
was,
said,
oh my God, he's been a ghost the whole time.
I just haven't seen the movie in 25 years. So
Yeah, and there's scenes that throw you where he's sitting with his wife at the restaurant, or he's talking to these people who are alive, and you're thinking he's interacting with them. But then when you go back and rewatch it, they don't react with him. They don't talk back with him. They don't acknowledge him or look at him or anything. So it's kind of like aha. So they don't see him. He really is dead. It's one-sided conversation he's having with everyone, except for the little boy.
gotcha. Now I'm tracking.
Yeah.
I'll have to go back and rewatch this one. But as far as number 2, I have a hard time putting it at number 2.
I do as well.
Yeah.
How about you, Tristan? You do too as well?
I don't really feel it's number 2. I would say maybe if it was like a top 15, maybe.
Yeah,
Definitely not
I could
top
see that
10.
as well. I mean, if I had to go back and put it at number 10, that 10 or 9.
I personally would rather see Tremors with Kevin Bacon
Yeah.
and Fred Ward on this list than The Sixth Sense, which I can firmly believe it's not. Tremors is not going to be number 1 because you've got films like Scream and Event Horizon on here. I don't think Tremors is going to beat any of those, but I would rather see Tremors on here than The Sixth Sense.
Yeah, I can't believe they
It was
didn't
a fun
give
90s
Val and
film.
they didn't give Val and Earl any love on here, considering how many sequels of Tremors that we've gotten over the years.
Exactly.
And how they've progressively gotten worse.
Yes, because that first one was quite a fun ride.
Val and Earl. All right, so drum roll, everybody. We're getting the number 1 film. There he is. I've seen dead people. And it's Silence of the Lambs. And I kind of agree, but I kind of could see if you don't.
I agree. No, this is a
agree.
masterpiece. I agree. This movie scared the shit out of me when I saw it, and I was 19 when it came out.
This is one of the few films that has won an Academy, or one of the few horror films that's actually won an Academy Award. I think it was nominated for Best Picture in 1991. It's one of those films that, yes, it's a horror film, which is typically steeped in fiction, but this is one that's definitely steeped in nonfiction. There's really nothing about this that could not happen in real everyday life.
The realism of this movie makes it very scary.
You've got Buffalo Bob, who is a serial killer, and Clarice, played by Meg Foster, is trying, or Jodie Foster, I'm sorry, not Meg Foster, Jodie Foster, who's trying to track him down. So to get into the mind of a serial killer, how do you best do that? By going and talking with a serial killer. So she goes and sees Sir Anthony Hopkins and strikes up a relationship with the Hannibal Lecter, and he gives her an insight into what goes through his mind. And you get to witness some of his brutal murders and different things like that, and talking about eating people's brains with fava beans and a nice candy. And but she uses him to try to track down this Buffalo Bob. And if you've ever watched Jay and Silent Bob, Clerks 2, where the goodbye horses and Jay is standing there with his legs crossed with the trench coat open, and they got that from Buffalo Bob. It is one of those films that it's not just a 90s film. This film goes way past that. This transcends decades, because it doesn't become old or stale. It continues to gain new audience and evolve, and it's not.
No.
It's aged perfectly over the last 33 years.
Yes, it has.
I mean, it's one. If you want to know what it's like to be in the mind of a serial killer, there you go. Silence of the Lambs is for you.
She put some lotion on it.
It's the lotion on the skin.
Yeah.
Or else it gets the hose again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that little shitty dog. And I love dogs, but that dog was an asshole.
Yes. Yeah, but no, I
Anthony
totally
Hopkins.
agree. I think this movie should be at number 1 for the 90s.
Yeah,
Nothing about this movie is not perfect.
no, it's Anthony Hopkins was born to play a serial killer. I know he probably doesn't want to hear that as, as a person out on the street. Like, sir, you did such a great job. You were born to be a serial killer. But he was. He laid down the blueprint for every other movie that you ever do that's based around true crime and a serial killer. I mean, if you go back and you watch the Dahmer Netflix series, there's bits and pieces of Hannibal Lecter that was taken from Silence of the Lambs and incorporated into Dahmer's character in that bio series or whatever you want to, biopic series or whatever you want to call it. It was just perfect. I mean, they showed it to us in high school. I had this really cool teacher in my literature class. Her name was Miss Rain. She was a Deadhead. She was all about the Grateful Dead. So she was hippie as shit. And she showed us this movie and she told us, she goes, this is how you write the perfect script, is basically how she put it out there. She goes, you could write this as a novel and it would be perfect. And she let us watch it. She was always letting us watch cool movies, though. But yeah, I mean, I can't move this out of number 1. Even if I tried, of all the other movies that we've named, I cannot move this one out of that number 1 spot. I just can't. And even if I did,
so we're
I
not going to
feel dirty for it.
We're not going to put Jason Goes to Hell at number 1 then?
No, hell no.
No. We'll keep this one then. We'll keep this one then.
No, I'm not putting Jason Goes to Hell in here. Or Jason Goes to Manhattan.
And I'm noticing it came out on February 14th. What a great date night this would have been for a lot of new couples going out to see for the first time.
And have you noticed nobody has tried to touch this as a remake?
No, and the
Thank
sequel, the second one, you mentioned Eating Brains. They actually do that in the next one. I won't say who or when. I don't want to spoil it too much, but that scene was pretty hard to watch. But that movie didn't come anywhere close to this one. I think Jodie Foster was wise not to reprise her role as Clarice. I think her reasoning was she didn't agree that Clarice would do the things that she ended up doing in the second movie. So she turned it down.
Like she went so far down the rabbit hole with the serial killer that she kind of became the serial killer.
Yeah, like it fucked her mind up or something like that. And she wasn't that sharp FBI agent anymore.
Yeah. Which I know it's a view askew type of thing that we can look at it from different points of view. I could see you being a federal agent or even a detective for a police department and going down so far down that rabbit hole while trying to solve that crime that it could affect you. It really can.
Oh, I can believe that. I worked in the emergency room. I worked in the emergency room of a hospital for years. So I've seen dead people and mutilated and hurt and kids. It fucked me up. It stays with me, and that's not even psychologically investing myself. That's just a quick visual. So to do this as a career, and you're studying them and following them, and you're trying to solve things and stuff, and you eat, sleep, and dream all of this stuff. I can totally understand how that would corrupt a brilliant mind, for sure.
Yep. It's like I've been reading about Robert Pickton. Have you ever heard of the pig farmer serial killer from the Vancouver, Canada?
Is Canada? Yeah, I know. It's weird that you said that for the first time today, earlier today. Yes, you used to
So
throw
I've
a great
been,
party or something. Yeah,
yeah, I used to, or I not used to, but I had been reading a lot about him, and a lot of the agents that worked that case came away from that with some sort of post-traumatic stress issues.
I
So,
bet. Yeah.
you know, and even today, I watched a what's his name, Richard Richard Ramirez. I watched a documentary on him. He was arrested almost 40 years ago, and to this day, those detectives that worked that case are still fighting with those demons
Oh, I bet. Yeah,
from that case. So
that's gotta be rough.
yeah, it's got to be. I couldn't imagine, and I'm somebody that, but I was in the military, so I've got a whole different kind of PTSD. Mine wasn't with dealing with serial killers. Mine was just from getting shot at and almost blowed up on a daily basis. But kind of the same thing, I guess, in a lot of sense.
That's gotta be rough.
So if we keep Silence of the Lambs #1, would we put Interview with the Vampire at #2?
Yeah, I could see that. I'm partial to that.
So no, #3 would stay Scream. #4, kick Jacob's Ladder all the way out of there. And let's see, what would we move? I would move Dracula up to 4. I would move all the rest of them up. Well, Ringu can't.
Yeah.
I'm going to,
Even
because I haven't seen it, and this is based off of movies I've seen.
yeah.
I would kick Ringu out and put Sixth Sense in 6.
I was gonna say, even if this was the Americanized version of this, The Ring, I would not have that on this list at all either.
Yeah. So we'll kick Ringu to the curb. Sorry, Ringu, and we'll put Sixth Sense at 6, and all the rest of them either stay or they move up 1. That's just me.
Yeah.
And bye, Jacob's Ladder. Never knew you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the Lawnmower Man. I'd much rather watch Lawnmower Man than Jacob's Ladder. But Silence of the Lambs, clearly, I think Scream Rant got it right. It is the movie of that decade. It was the movie that defined horror for the 90s. If you were just going strictly slasher, it's Scream and Candyman, obviously. Psychological, yeah, I would say The Sixth Sense. Sci-fi horror, Event Horizon, but yeah, Silence of the Lambs, clearly the winner. I think they got that one right. But one from #2 on back, I say it's a toss-up. You could put whatever you want there. But I just can't see anything being but Silence of the Lambs at 1.
Yeah.
What say you?
I agree.
That's you, Tristan.
I agree with replacement. I agree with replacement. Most of them are kind of a toss-up. Silence of the Lambs is #1. I don't think there's any other movie that can beat it.
Yeah, I think the rest of them are just in terms of your fandom for that particular movie is where you would place it. I've got a bunch of B movies that I could put on this list easily.
Mm-hmm.
But for the sake of this, I'm not going to do that because most people probably haven't heard of half of them.
Well, let's put Virus on there. You were talking about that earlier, weren't you, Tristan? The Jamie Lee
I was
Curtis
talking about
movie?
that at #10.
I think we got rid of 2 movies. That could replace Ringu.
Oh, okay, Ringu, Never Knew You. Jacob's Ladder, Never Knew You.
Yeah.
So we'll put Virus and Sixth
The only
Sense
other movie I can
places of those
throw
2
on there is Dusk Till Dawn was the only other one I could.
Oh yeah, Dusk Till Dawn. Yeah.
Like I said, this. If anybody's watched the people that's watching the stream, just hey, this list is very subjective, but I don't think any of us can argue what number one overall is. I think this one's clear cut across the board with most people,
Yeah.
but the rest of them are very subjective in how you feel about a particular film. Like I said, I could totally fill out the rest of this list with B movie garbage, but that's my kind of genre. Me and Tristan talk about them all the time. What people call trash movies, I call gold. So, I'm the guy that watched Cocaine Bear and found it enjoyable.
I did too.
Yeah.
And it's based on a true story.
Exactly.
I mean,
yeah.
the bear died in the real story because
Yeah.
he got cocaine intoxication. He didn't get superpowers from the cocaine and start killing people. That was the work of fiction in the movie. But one of my all-time favorite movies is Wolf Cop. Luke hates Wolf Cop. It is what it is. I love that damn movie. Oh, Matt Arnett
No.
said Troll 2.
Troll 2 is the worst.
But it's so bad it's good.
Oh, it's so bad. Period.
And Michael Mann's Manhunter.
Yeah, that was good.
Did she? He asked me if my teacher used to bring the special brownies. No, she didn't. We didn't need them. We normally were out in the parking lot doing whatever and then walking into the school high as shit. So yeah, we didn't need no magic brownies. To be a kid in the 90s. We're the generation that ruined it for your generation, Tristan. I'm sorry.
No. They've only gotten worse.
Yeah.
Or did we?
Yeah, you all started messing around with stuff that I like, bath salts and different crazy shit that. God, why can't y'all just stick to regular narcotics for God's sake?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Normal stuff. Spice. Yeah, let's smoke some potpourri. Yeah, that sounds awesome. But that's the list, ladies and gentlemen. We all agreed that Silence of the Lambs is number one. And if any of y'all want to, go down in the comments once this live stream's over and put what your top 10 would be. Like I said, it's very subjective. But I will have to disagree with you if you change the number one. But it's your personal preference, and I'm never going to hate on somebody for their own personal opinion. I may agree to disagree, but I will never hate on you because I like some movies that people absolutely hate. Case in point, Basket Case. I love that movie, and people hate it, but I love it.
I liked it
That's
too.
what it is. Yeah.
Brain Damage was a fun one too. Dead Alive. Remember Dead Alive?
Mm-hmm.
That one.
Yeah. I love Frankenhooker. Great movie.
I just watched that recently.
Psychos in Love. Have you seen that one?
No, I haven't.
No, I haven't.
All right. Psychos in Love. Till Death Do Us Part, I believe was the tag. That was more 80s. I think 87-ish. Very, very low quality B movie, but very fun. It's got a song about grapes, and their motive for killing some of the people are because they like grapes. So it's definitely kind of a not serious at all, but a spoof, if you will. But yeah, check out if you like really bad B movies. Like I think John, I heard you say that earlier. Watch Psychos in Love.
I got another one out there, Tristan. I don't know if you've seen this one, but the original Street Trash from 1987.
No, I have not.
It's not necessarily a horror, but it's very much a body horror movie. It's a lot of body gore and body disfigurement and different things in it. They had that one in 87, and then they just did a remake. Ryan Kruger, friend from Facebook, and Frank Farrell, who I'm also friends with on Facebook. They both did a recent one that just came out 2 weeks ago, I think. Street Trash 2024.
Nice.
So you like that kind of shit, so I'm sure you would love that.
Street Trash is very Traumaville-esque.
Yeah, it's
Trauma release-esque.
It's one of those films. There's no middle ground to it. It's either you hate it or you love it. It's never really an in between. A lot of people hate it because they feel like it's exploiting the homeless. I don't think so. That's my personal opinion. Because it is a film from its time, which was the 1980s. A lot of shit was being exploited in the 80s. A lot of shit. I mean, my God, you had Jason Voorhees murdering every teen that dared to have sex in the woods, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
So there's that. Somebody just wrote a comment. What did they say? Somebody else said Troll 2. Wow, we've got 2 for Troll 2. Holy shit.
They must be joking.
I didn't think there was that much fandom for Troll 2. God, I always thought that movie was terrible.
You got the only 2 fans of Troll 2 watching your show right now.
I mean, it's a bad terrible, or not a bad, a good terrible. I'm sorry, a good terrible. It's so bad it's good kind of thing. You can't help but watch it. It's like a car wreck.
I can't.
You know, it's just.
And I can't really knock Troll 2 too bad because, like I said, Cycles in Love was horrible.
There's one I told Tristan about that came out in 88 or 89-ish. It was a Christmas horror movie called Elves. Look it up. Elves, the trailer for it. It is so bad. But God, it's one of those gems that you have to dig through a turd to find.
Just the image for the trailer.
Yeah. It's not good, but you can't help but just not sit down with a bucket of popcorn and not watch it.
I think it's time for me. I have to get going too. I thank you for having me on.
Yeah,
it's been great and great list. I had fun going over the list. If you ever do an 80s episode of this, consider me again. I can hold my own a lot better with the 80s than with the 90s. So.
Yep, I think the next one I'm going to do is going to be 80s. I kind of went ass backwards. So we did the 90s. I think the next one I'll do be the 80s, and then we'll go to the 70s. The
Groovy.
disco time.
Yes, far out.
Well, Jason, it's been a pleasure having you and actually putting a voice to the person I've been talking to on Facebook. Hope to do this with you again soon. And don't be a stranger, man.
It's been great. All right. Thank you very much, Tristan. It was good meeting you.
Likewise.
All right.
Have a good one, man.
Have a good one. You too.
You too. So, Tristan, we got not troll, but elves. And you're looking that up. What's your first thought? I'm not going to spoil it for you.
Just the monster effect. Oh my God. Just the elf by the tree.
It's more than one.
Trailer.
It's like Temu Gremlins. It's basically what the movie is. It's basically Wish.com Temu Gremlins. It's bad. But it's such a good bad. It really is. It's perfect for Christmas, I guess. There was one I just watched last year it's newer. It's called Christmas Bloody Christmas. Look that one up if you want. Christmas Bloody Christmas. So basically the premise of that movie is they took these military robots that they got I guess they discontinued the manufacture of them. So the ones that they had already created, they repurposed them and made them into Santa Clauses and put them in around like malls. And this thing just goes straight Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator, dude, and just starts killing everybody.
Shudder. Hold on. I actually have
and it's
Shudder.
It's not a good movie, but damn, I loved it. I loved Christmas Bloody Christmas. But I'm that guy. You can give me the shittiest movie that you could possibly think of, and I'm going to find enjoyment in it. Except for the Banana Splits movie. That movie was just ass on ass on ass.
They
I'm
were trying to
sorry. If you
capitalize on Five Nights at Freddy's. That's why they just wanted to capitalize on
that
Five Nights at Freddy's.
some of the practical effects were fine in it, but Jesus Christ, I could not follow the story for the life of me. I mean, Velociraptor, for Christ's sake, is one of the worst shot movies I've ever seen with the worst effects, but it had a story I could follow, even though the raptor in it was a dude in one of those blow up Tyrannosaurus costumes that you see in meme videos or whatever from the internet. It was just bad, and Banana Splits had money behind it. It was also based off of a '70s children's show
No,
from
I
Warner
know.
Brothers, I think, and it had no life to it. And somebody told me that it was basically the original Five Nights at Freddy's script that's basically what they made that movie off of, which I can believe that. I can so believe that. But, you know, if I got any Banana Splits fans in the chat, I'm sorry that I shit on your flick, but it's not good
There's
for
actually
me.
just a better version of it out there. It's called what Willy's
Five
Wonderland?
Nights at
What
Freddy's?
was that? No,
Yeah.
no.
Oh,
It
yeah.
had.
Yeah, Nicolas Cage's movie.
I love that movie.
Willy's Willy's
Willy's
Wonderland?
Wonderland.
Totally. Totally. Willy's Wonderland clears the Banana Splits movie, no contest. It clears it. And the thing I liked about Willy's Wonderland, and thanks for that, because I would have never thought of that, is Nicolas Cage is in that movie and speaks no dialogue in the entire movie. And it's just that dynamic of he's trapped in this restaurant, he's working off a debt, and he speaks no dialogue. And it works. I think Nicolas Cage is perfect for B movies. I do. I mean, he's perfect for big blockbusters, but I think he's totally perfect for the B movie, especially now in the latter stages of his career. Mandy, Mandy, I felt like I needed to be on fentanyl to actually understand what in the hell was going on in that movie. And I'm not taking fentanyl because it'll kill you. So therefore, I had a
Yep.
hard time following Mandy because it just seemed like, dude, am I on acid watching this? Now I did like the Cheddar Goblin. Cheddar Goblin kind of won me over. This little goblin throwing up mac and cheese was kind of epic.
Oh
But
yeah.
other than that, I couldn't really follow Mandy. And then they had Iggy Pop 2.0 in there at the end. But
Oh, I actually enjoyed Mandy. Just the drugs, the giant the awesome battle axe.
yeah,
I enjoyed it.
you can buy that actually on Etsy. There's people that make that axe. You can buy it. They
Oh, I don't
3D
know if you
print it.
saw my. I don't know if you saw the prop I painted during Halloween. It wasn't supposed to be for Halloween, but my work trip ended up getting canceled. So I came up with a last minute costume. Ended up buying like this cheap little plastic axe and painting up the blood and adding rust to it.
Hmm.
Just sat down, did about a few minutes of weathering and stuff to it.
What are you doing? A Warhammer cosplay?
I did a cultist. I tried to make myself a cultist and did the makeup for like the
Oh,
mark.
one of my favorite video game antagonists is Joseph Seed from the Far Cry. I think it was Far Cry 4 or 5. It's
No,
the one that
if
took
it's in
place in
America, it's 5.
Montana. Yeah, Far
It's
Cry
5.
5. Joseph Seed in that was such a great antagonist because once I started playing that game, I couldn't stop. He
Oh,
reminded me so much of a David Koresh type that it was just Which I don't know. The Far Cry games always have a badass antagonist to them, but he, to me, just stole the show. And I can't think of the real actor's name, but I'm like, dude, if you ever wanted to make a cult movie about a religious cult, he'd be perfect. He looks like David Koresh, for Christ's sake. I think he was based off of like a Jim Jones, David Koresh type. If any of you all don't know who
Right.
Jim Jones is don't drink the Kool-Aid, guys. That's all I can say. That's all I'm
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
leave you with on that one. But in 1970 something, he had a bunch of people commit mass suicide by putting cyanide in Kool-Aid.
Yep.
Because they were all going to go to heaven. But yeah. Tristan, we got to do this again, man. I had fun having you on here. I like
Oh,
talking
big
movies
time.
with you.
Oh, I'm always down. You know this.
Next time we do this, I think me and you should go down the rabbit hole of really bad, shitty movies and introduce these people to them. And I'm going to force you viewers out there to watch this or to actually search for these movies, because these are not common movies that you're just going to find laying around. These movies
I was
are
going to say,
buried treasure. And when I say buried treasure, normally means they're buried under a lot of turd. And you got to dig through the shit to find them, because they're not good, but they are. Like Cue the
I don't
Winged
know. There's some
Serpent. I'll
movies
leave
that
you
I
with that one.
like. There's a few movies that I like. Virus, I know a lot of people don't like it because they think it's too simple of a story and everything. I just like it because they did really cool creature effects and everything, and nobody, for some reason, nobody knows about it at all.
I got Cue the Winged Serpent. I've got Chud. I've got Pieces, which is a Texas Chainsaw Massacre meets Michael Myers slasher. It's kind of a mashup between those two films about this guy on a college campus murdering kids or college students. What's another one? Tourist Trap. That's another great one. I mean, I could just keep going on and on. Velocipaster. I enjoyed it for as
Yeah.
bad as it was. But yeah, I think next go around we should talk about really shitty B movies, schlocky movies, if you will, the ones that would make William Castle proud.
I'm always down for doing that. What was, I'm trying to think. Demonic Toys is one
Yep.
that I know. Yep.
That's one from Full Moon Entertainment, the guy that
Yep.
made he made the Puppet Master films.
Yep. Ginger Dead Man is one of that I know me and you have talked about. Evil Bong at all?
Yeah, Evil Bong. Yeah. Well, man, I'm gonna get out of here because my belly hurts. I'm hungry. I haven't eaten all day.
Me too. So,
But I do appreciate you coming on here and helping us with the list. And I would love for you to be a regular if you
I'm
wouldn't
always
mind,
around. I don't mind.
because you're one of the few people on this island that actually knows a lot about this horror movie shit other than myself. And I know that's weird to anybody watching this, that we live on Hawaii. And if you're not down with anime or manga or Junji Ito, horror is not really that celebrated here. I mean, there's horror fans here, but they're you kind of got to look for it, basically. They're
I
not.
think it's more people started filming movies out here again.
Well, the film industry is starting to grow out here. I was reading a thing about it the other day. The industry's starting to pick up out here a little bit. And there's all kinds of stuff you could do out here horror wise, like the Night Marchers. You could so do a
Oh, yeah.
found footage on those.
Ooh,
Anything.
that would
And
be
then
fun.
you got these the Filipino urban legends like the Ashwan and different things like that. The Japanese demonic dog, I forget what they call it, where they curse a family with this demon dog. Yeah, there's all kinds of haunted shit out here, folks.
Oh yeah.
Lots of haunted shit out here and lots of urban legends. And because it's a melting pot here, you have Chinese urban legends, you have Japanese, Korean, Filipino, Thai, us Caucasians from the mountains of Caucasus. We have our own little urban legends, like from Ireland, if you have the Banshee and different things like that. So yeah, it's a cultural melting pot here, and that's what I love about it here. It's not just you're not running into the same person constantly. But I do appreciate you being on here, man. And hopefully we can make this a permanent thing. Tomorrow I have Mr. Josh Brucker bright and early tomorrow morning coming on. He's a filmmaker. Has made movies based on some urban legends and or cryptids. He just made one about a year and a half, 2 years ago called The Mothman. He's part of the Hard Dads Productions, good friend of mine. Him and Dylan Brown. And he's working on a new film, and I'm gonna let him tell you all about it tomorrow. So look for that. That'll be bright and early here tomorrow, Hawaii time, and around lunchtime for you all normal people that don't live on the international date line almost out on the mainland. But other than that, I don't have anything. And if any of you all are watching from Hawaii and looking for comic books or anything in that nature, go see my buddy Luke down at Dragon's Lair Comics. And if you're really into Warhammer and Magic cards, go down there and go see Tristan and the gang. They're always down there playing Warhammer and Magic. So if you all are here in Hawaii watching this live stream, go hang out with them. They're all good guys. Just watch out for Donnie. He might try to touch you in some inappropriate ways. But other than that, Tristan and the rest of them are cool. Love you, Donnie.
All right.
Smooches. But other than that, I'm gonna get out of here. Like I said, thanks to Dave and Jason coming on. You too, Tristan, and we'll have Tristan back on again. Next time we'll talk about some B movie bullshit. But it's been your old buddy John, and that's been old Tristan over there, the young boy. We'll see you around.